Good afternoon and welcome to Tokenverse series, where we bring together artists, creators, blockchain specialists, investors, intellectuals, and a variety of experts to discuss the potential and future of Web3 technologies. Tokenverse series is brought to you by Doing Good, which is an NFT platform empowering creators and connecting people who want to do good across the world. Now, this is the very first podcast in the series, a very momentous occasion. And in today's episode, we're going to discuss ownership, royalties, and copyrights in the NFT world with following guests. So we've got artist Ovidiu Valeriu Boior, who is based in Barcelona and is originally from Romania. Then we're joined by two lawyers, Anya Blai, who is a lawyer and a co-founder of Future Law Institute, as well as president of blockchain think tank Slovenia. Next, Shirley Goodman, an IP lawyer based in LA, who's also got many other businesses and projects, but we don't have enough time to discuss it here. And finally, we're joined by Manu Alzuru, who is the engineer humanist and Solarpunk. Manu, what's Solarpunk?
Solarpunk is basically a person that believes that you can use technology in order to coordinate and make the world a better place.
Fantastic. And so Manu is also a co-founder of Doing Good, a platform that we mentioned, which is focused on social impact. And we also have Alejo Rodriguez here, who is helping us with the broadcast. Thank you, Alejo, for being here. Right. So thank you everyone online joining us. Stick with us because it's going to be profound. And now, so we're about to discuss the ownership of NFTs. I was wondering if I should remind everyone what NFTs are, or do we assume our audience know? Should I give my understanding for it?
Please do.
Yeah, I have a little try. Okay, so the way I understand it, NFTs are digital assets which represent objects such as art, music, painting, videos, in-game items, and they have a certificate of authenticity which is encoded in blockchain. And of course, they hold values in a way of cryptocurrency. Now, Manu, was that correct, or would you add or change something to my definition?
I can add a couple of things to it, maybe. So to me, NFTs, apart from being an asset that can represent ownership of, let's say, some media or maybe some real world assets, also are, to me, are these new cookies of the new internet. So whenever you interact with a smart contract or whenever you interact with a creator or so on, you can collect those cookies, let's say. Usually in the Web2 space, like your computer is already like collecting those cookies. In the Web3 space, from my perspective, the NFTs are like this new way of representing that you have interacted with a smart contract or so on. Also, NFTs can be seen as a ticket to experiences. So one of the things that I've seen that many creators are doing is that they're selling their digital work and that have, let's say, the possibility for the collector to have a direct channel of communication with the creator. So for me, this new asset enable creators to own their fan base for the first time. Before we had Spotify, we had Instagram, and we had all of these different social medias where you as a creator, what you are is you are accumulating all of these followers, but these followers, you have no ownership on them. With NFTs, whenever you release any of these assets to your fan base, you finally have a direct connection with them. So you can create multiple experiences around those NFTs that you're giving out. So yeah, to me, they're more than just an asset to speculate with.
Fantastic. So we're already taking it to another level. But let's go to the ownership subject of the NFTs. And, you know, looking at the news from the last week, I think it's the viral video, which is called Charlie Bit My Finger. was taken offline after being sold as NFT. And this would lead us to believe that there is not much difference when it comes to selling art as NFTs, you know, in comparison to selling art like, I don't know, Van Gogh painting. So I was wondering, perhaps, obviously, it's not like that, and we're going to explore it and unfold the subject a little bit more for our listeners. Ovidiu, tell me, as an artist, what is generally the vibe in the art circles? Like, how are people feeling about the subject of ownership and copyrights of NFTs? Is it something clear to them, or is it something which makes people a bit befuddled and confused?
I think that people are still confused about the ownership and what you actually have when you buy an NFT. Because I think from my discussion with some people, I understood that they understand that when you buy an NFT, you own the, let's say, the picture or the image or the file, but you just own the copyright ownership remain to the artist. As a owner of NFT, you don't have rights to, like, intellectual rights of the creation itself. And
I think at that stage we can have an opinion of one of the lawyers, maybe Anya, in layman terms, from the lawyer's perspective.
This is what I understood. Is that true, if I don't mind?
Let's verify with Anya. Is that correct understanding of the difference between acquiring the artwork in a real world?
That's why we have the IP legal expert here on the call, Sholi. So I might actually just, you know, pass the mic to Sholi directly.
Okay, Sholi.
I don't think the question is necessarily phrased properly. A copyright exists to essentially, so you guys asked what an NFT is. I think similar to the confusion, if you ask a layperson, what is blockchain, what is Bitcoin, what is crypto, they can't see the difference between the three, and anybody who's familiar with the space understands that they're fundamentally different. Right? Blockchain is an ecosystem. Crypto is a vehicle. Bitcoin just happens to be the trademark or the name brand within crypto. You asked a question earlier as to what NFTs are. My belief is that in 2 years max, NFTs will merge with the emerging reality that social media and tech giants are losing control on ownership of data, right? If you look at all the emerging tech that's happening in terms of platforms such as cell phones and other media platforms, people are tired of giving away their data without getting compensated, and people are getting educated to the fact that their data is the most valuable asset on the face of the planet. So I believe NFTs are and will become the ability to monetize, control your data, your activities online. That's why I don't have social media. The question of what copyright you have, Anya, this actually touches on the conversation we had yesterday, which is it depends which country you are, depends what medium you're creating on. In the States, you inherently have a copyright the moment you create anything. If I draw a line on a piece of paper, I technically have a copyright in it. Whether I file that copyright and enforce that copyright, and whether that's state, federal, national, global, that depends on the contracts you create. So nothing exists inherently, right? You can fight for it in reverse, but your copyrights are controlled by the contracts that you create. And smart contracts, unfortunately, are similar to the Kmarts of law, right? Most people, when you create your NFT, do you know what your smart contract says? Do you understand the difference between the contract you signed with the platform and or the end buyer? Really, because your transaction is with the end buyer. What does your physical contract relate to your digital contract? And did you even compare the two? And did you mint your NFT? Do you actually own your NFT? Who minted Beeple's NFT? Beeple doesn't own his NFT. So I think minting and data is going to be the future of the answer to your question.
Maybe you kindly explain to us the difference between blockchain and crypto and Bitcoin. Maybe we should also have a quick definition about ownership, copyright, and royalties. Anya, are you happy to step in here and kind of give us definition for these legal terms?
Of blockchain and crypto, I don't believe we actually have.
Sorry?
For the royalties, you mean? Right.
Yeah, for the
So, for
ownership,
example,
like, you know, because it's very interesting what Sholi is saying. However, to be on the same page, what do we actually mean by ownership?
right. So maybe first thing that needs to be understood is that smart contract does not really represent a contract in a legal term, and we are having a conflict or are dealing with these legal language discrepancies. You know, things get lost in translation all the time. But basically, when we are dealing with usual contracts from the legal point of view, we have two phases. First is the negotiation phase, and the second one is the execution phase. So with the negotiation phase, what happens is the parties usually explain what their interests are, what their value systems are, what they want to achieve with that contract, what they actually want to put into writing. Now, when it comes to the second phase of the contract, when things get executed, I usually give you the key and you now have the access to the house, for example. And with smart contract, what is basically happening is that just the second phase of that contractual relationship is really taking place. While, for example, negotiations are happening far before the smart contract is being deployed, or far before you end up with minted tokens, or far before the tokens are being sold. So, for example, when negotiation phase is happening online is when you click that box and accept the terms and conditions on the platform, or whenever you start or sign the creators agreement. That is when we negotiate the terms and conditions, and only afterwards we actually execute it with, for example, the smart contract. Now, with the ownership, what is happening here is maybe a good example might be selling a car. So you basically have a car has different elements, car has different characteristics, and you can drive it, you can destroy it, you can do with it whatever you actually want to. But when you sell it, especially if you sell it officially, you get a certificate of that sell relationship being actually conducted. So with that certificate, you become an owner. And we even have registries that are usually owned and managed by the states, or at least some sort of an official register or agency. And in that registry, you usually have very well explained who the owner of that car is. However, me just being in that registry or me just having that certificate in my hand does not really allow me, or does not really enable me to really destroy the car. I would still have to have the car in front of me to drive it or to destroy it. And similar things are happening with art. No matter whether we digitalize that art, or no matter if we actually create those certificates, just holding the certificate in your hand, or just holding whatever digital confirmation that you had created that art, does not really provide you with the right to destroy it, or well, it does provide you with the right, but it does not enable you directly to deal with that art. So those two things are still separated. And even if we tokenize, even when we digitalize all the physical assets, we have to take into account that we are basically just creating the mirroring picture of whatever exists in a physical form. So when we are dealing with these two types of assets, we still have to link it back together, or we still have to build bridges between what is happening with the digital thing and how this is then reflected on a physical art. So having an ownership over that art is still quite complicated. And when we create these tokens, we still need to figure out how the legal link is going to be created. Now, when we are owning things and we are selling those things, we can distribute the proceeds of those sales however we want to. And this is where Doing Good actually comes into place. What Doing Good is now creating is that whenever I sell the art, if it gets resold, I actually get the royalties as the creator of that art. Meaning whenever it's going to be resold, I'm still going to get some royalties. I'm still getting to get some percentages of every single sale, because nevertheless, I'm the main creator.
And how are the other platforms out there dealing with it, Manu? Are you able to tell us what's the, maybe not the industry standard, but how the other platforms such as Nifty Gateway or Rarible, how are they dealing with it?
Yeah, so each platform is experimenting with a standard that they're creating. So what I think, if I'm not mistaken, what Nifty Gateway is doing is that they're only able to give you the royalties only if the NFTs remain within their platform. Once the tokens are out of the platform, actually you lose that capability. And if I'm not mistaken, it's the same thing as with Super Rare. And they have and Rarible the same, yeah, and they have a standard number for the creators. I think, if I'm not mistaken, most of them have between 10 to 15%.
And we're lucky that we also joined by the other artist, Kyle Gordon, who is a veteran blockchain enthusiast and a successful NFT artist. Also the founder of Studio Zero, which is independent production studio, art collective, and creative agency based in San Francisco. Welcome, Kyle. I was wondering, you've got some experience in NFTs. So from your perspective, what does actually put artists in I don't know, in peace? What do artists want? What's the thing that makes it comfortable and make people confident to upload and sell their art?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say the biggest things. So what I've noticed is most artists aren't too concerned with the tech. A lot of artists are very trusting, I would say, and they just kind of assume if someone tells them that they're doing something, they just assume it's being done correctly. And that's totally okay, because this is such an innovative space. You know, they don't know any better. A lot of the platforms don't know any better either. But I think the big question that artists need to be concerned with is, how is the artwork being stored from like a media file standpoint? It's obviously not being stored on chain. So it's being stored in other providers using like IFPS, AWS, or other like third-party cloud storage providers. Is it centralized storage? Is it decentralized storage? With regards to the royalty splits, everyone kind of assumes that in perpetuity, those are just going to be intact no matter what people do with the NFTs. And I think, you know, it's cool that a lot of platforms have integrated with OpenSea to an extent where they'll try and keep those royalties intact. But outside of that, it's still very segregated and spread out, and everyone kind of is carving out their own niches. I would say the next thing that artists care about is having flexibility over their creation as well. You know, I think there's some platforms that do a really good job at providing lots of different options at the expense of ease of use. And then there's other platforms where it's like as simple as type in your title, description, and price. And so I think what we're starting to see now is creators getting smarter and smarter and realizing as they get deeper into this space that they do want more tools, and they do kind of want these things packaged nicely for them so they don't have to deal with the tech. At the end of the day, like, artists just want to make art. Like, you know, once you start throwing in barriers such as like, you know, the different features and tech and all this kind of stuff, or like custom contracts and all this stuff, I think what we're going to start seeing is people developing more complex features that benefit their artwork and really take full advantage of the medium without the artist having to deep dive into like how to write their own smart contracts.
Mm-hmm. And Ovidiu, from your perspective, what personally would you like to see on an NFT platform in order to make your experience positive?
That's a great question.
It's a good question. And I don't know if I have an answer yet, but for example, an interesting thing that I noticed on Rarible, the platform where I have my NFT, it's this possibility of giving an extra, like an unlockable item for the owner, for the, who owns my creation, can unlock a future, like a special feature of the piece itself. And this is an interesting factor and challenging for the artist, because they can improve their creativity, come with new ideas, what they can offer to their audience or to their fans. And I think this is an interesting future and a good one for NFT marketplace in general. Mm-hmm. And going back a bit on royalties, this is some really powerful that NFT can offer for the artist, because every time, so you create something and forever and ever, as long as it's on the same platform, you get the royalties every time when it's sold. This is also something good. And still there are many things to be understood by the artist. For me, it was relatively easy to create it, but I needed some help to understand what that means, what the wallet means, how to buy cryptocurrency in order to create the NFT. I needed somehow a help, and I think it's still not. It's accessible for most of the people, but you need to put your brain a bit in game to understand. And maybe some people are more comfortable and they are like, okay, I don't want that, but I would suggest and I recommend to the artist to be open and to go for the new technologies, to try to see new things and have new perspectives.
It seems like different platforms are offering different solutions, and surely you kind of a visionary. I was wondering if you can foresee if there's going to be any standardization when it comes to ownership and copyrights in NFTs.
I think there's a nice piggyback between that question and what Anya was saying. My most common phrase that I say in my legal practice is I don't draft contracts. I negotiate deals and then I memorialize them on paper. And I think what's going to happen is the fast track to sale, which is what the artists are excited about, as the speculative hyperbolic system fades away, right? It's gone. I'm now advising people who thought they'd make $1 million on their alien autopsy drop NFTs that you're not getting any bids because you're not doing real world marketing and real world advertising. Everything's going to flip back to the real world. Digital will be supported by physical. So I just think it's going to go back to regular legal, where you actually negotiate a deal. Nothing's a rush. You figure out exactly what you want to do with your copyright, or what you want to do with your art, what you want to see it do downstream, right? You can, at the same time that people are saying, I want royalties in perpetuity, the opposite question is, what if I say I want royalties for 3 sales down the line? Are those controllable? I heard earlier somebody mentioned that I think OpenSeas, I was actually with Nate Jones yesterday discussing this topic. They can't, not only do they not control fully downstream royalties to be payable to the artists, first of all, in the real world, how would you control collecting on royalties downstream? Are you going to be speaking to everybody who bought a piece of art and saying, pay me and collect? Are you knocking on doors? On Nifty Gateway, you can't actually get a royalty from a private to private sale, even if it's on the platform itself. So again, these are just bad contracts and quick legal. Everything will suss out at some point to good legal and good contracts. And I don't believe that the digital space will control that at the end of the day, unless we have digital judges and digital lawyers.
Does it mean that we are to expect a set of new laws, or do we need new legal structures to tackle this subject? Anya?
I'll go first, sorry.
Sorry, surely.
It's okay, please. I don't want to.
I mean, my deep belief is that yes, law is nevertheless a social construct that changes all the time. And it's not here by itself for itself, but it's here to serve the communities, to serve us as human beings. The fact that we have been creating a very homeostatic laws, very positive laws, and that we kind of tend to put the responsibility onto the lawyers and onto the contracts for whatever is happening in real life is actually going to change. So I do believe that what is happening right now with the crypto space broadly, with the digital domain, is actually demanding a new digital legal dimension, basically. So yeah, I do believe that the laws are going to be following up, that the regulators are actually going to be following up as well, and that possibly there's going to be something that we previously called the lex mercatoria in 16th, 17th century. But basically what's happening is that we, as the users and as the stakeholders within the digital domain, are also responsible for our own house rules. We are the one that are actually crafting these relationships between ourselves, and therefore might actually be taking more responsibility into our own hands with regard to how do we want to manage these relationships, how do we want to resolve disputes, for example, what types of conducts are acceptable and which are not. And for example, a lot of these corresponding questions were raised with Ethereum governance, with DAO hack, for example, and lots of different, not really different, but similar cases. So to some extent, yes, I do believe that law is being challenged here, and it's going to be following up with a lot of changes.
And what kind of institutions or governments are going to be pioneering this? Is it going to be like in the case of ICOs? Remember, there was like Gibraltar and Malta coming with the first kind of regulations. I don't know.
Possibly, very possibly.
Or can we expect a watchdog or something like this?
I think the ICO craze was the first experiment, or maybe it happened even before, but at that time, definitely a lot of regulators saw the profits and wanted to protect their own citizens because there were a lot of scams, and we knew that, for example, the customer protection needs to be on a higher level, that we need to establish some sort of an investment protection, and a lot of governments or a lot of authorities were actually issuing guidelines, or at least pointing out the red flags, sort of what shouldn't be done on the market, or what is the good practice, what are the good use cases. So definitely that was one experiment, and the NFTs are kind of repeating the whole game. And I do believe that those who invested previously into the education of their regulators, or whomever was actually looking into whether new laws need to be composed, or was actually invested into the guidelines, will have a much better position when it comes to how do we now govern the NFTs, and whether the NFTs are securities, or is that a completely new type of an asset, or just how we might regulate them and to which extent, and whether we now need to create the legal sandboxes, whether we need to kind of ease the rules around the securities or the licensing, or how can we actually help these developers and the technical projects, along with doing good, for example, to really have that innovation on the market instead of just stiffing the whole development in this space.
Mm-hmm. By the sounds of it, the legal structure is still kind of things to come. So I was wondering if we could concentrate a bit more on the current solutions. And I was wondering if Manu, in correspondence, what you heard from the artists and from the lawyers, describe a little bit of functionality of doing good platform, how it's tackling these issues.
Yeah, so what I'm envisioning is basically our platform to have different type of standards, and that whenever a creator comes to our platform, that they can select what is the type of sale that they want to have, what is the type of rights that they want to give, what are the different type of royalties that they want to also receive, and also what are the different type of collaborators that they have for that specific NFT that they're releasing, and what are the different, let's say, percentages that is going to be distributed between all the collaborators. So imagine that you're coming to the platform, you upload the media, and then you say, I want to do, let's say, English auction, and that is this have the idea of this NFT and print it on a hoodie, for example, and resell the hoodie. That could be one example. But then maybe maybe in that same field where we have all these different options for the rights that the NFT might have, maybe there's also an option where you can have, okay, there's an expiration time for these rights. Maybe after 2 years or after 10 years, the rights are expired. Or maybe that you can even give those rights to other person afterwards. Or maybe before you can give the rights, maybe the creator needs to approve that the new person that is receiving the NFT actually has those rights. So I'm envisioning, let's say, kind of like a NFT studio where you select all the different modules and you build your funnel, or you build the lifetime of your NFT. That's what we really want to do.
Oh, sounds.
That's great news for humanity and a great vision. But as Ovidiu told us before, sometimes the artists find it a bit overwhelming, the number of options and so on. So the question is, how do we make sure that we can kind of communicate and translate all these possibilities and the legal stuff and the science behind it to the artists?
Yeah. So the way that I
Hire a
think that it
lawyer.
can be done, the way that I think that it can be done is basically give the creators, let's say, the default settings, so they don't need to think too much about it. And the default settings are kind of like standards that we have agreed upon. Obviously, those standards can be changed because, as you know, we're going to be creating a DAO. So the members of the DAO can be saying, okay, these are the default scenarios for our platform. So like that, the creator come in and they don't need to think about it too much. However, you might have an advanced option. And when you click in the advanced option, then it can expand up and then you can select and build it yourself. So that's the way that I'm thinking will be the best way to do it, because at the end of the day, yeah, sure, like having a lot of choices sometimes creates a lot of friction. A clear example is when you are in an ice cream shop with 100 flavors.
Good afternoon and welcome to Tokenverse series, where we bring together artists, creators, blockchain specialists, investors, intellectuals, and a variety of experts to discuss the potential and future of Web3 technologies. Tokenverse series is brought to you by Doing Good, which is an NFT platform empowering creators and connecting people who want to do good across the world. Now, this is the very first podcast in the series, a very momentous occasion. And in today's episode, we're going to discuss ownership, royalties, and copyrights in the NFT world with following guests. So we've got artist Ovidiu Valegiu Boior, who is based in Barcelona